sun glared down on the travelling caravan ambling along the dusty road to Maribor. Towards the rear of the convoy, Galanthea sat in the back of a wagon, watching the Witcher intently as he slowly approached her on horseback. She greeted him with a welcoming smile. "You have my utmost gratitude for your services last night." He furrowed his brow, resentful of the compliment, but reluctantly accepted and gave her a cursory nod. Galanthea chuckled to herself as a thought crossed her mind. I guess by extension, Alzur saved me yet again. The Witcher clenched his jaw and his nostrils flared. "Something the matter, my dear?" she asked. "I'd wager you didn't just trot over here to bask in my appreciation." He paused, taking a moment to compose his thoughts. "Did you even know Alzur?" "Oh, I knew him better than most." "Then why spew shit you know ain't true?" He cracked his neck. "Maybe you're just delusional, or utterly blind." She smiled. "Truths aren't necessarily universal, my boy. Sometimes they're just a matter of perspective." The Witcher grumbled, rode in silence for a while, then shook his head with frustration. "Love?" he rebuked. "If he actually cared for others, he would never have done what he did. What he no doubt still does." "You have something you'd like to say?" Galanthea eyed the man, then stifled a yawn. "Sleep eluded me last night, as you can imagine. So hop to it, lad, while I'm still cognizant." "Do you even have an inkling of how Alzur and his lackeys make witches?" "Well, not with love, I deduce. They take little boys, they nab them from the streets, and they pay off the parents if they have to. Do whatever they can to get their hands on fresh subjects. You see, it has to be children. That's what they told us. Cosimo, the older mage, white-bearded bastard he was, used to always rattle off some bullshit about malleability. He and Alzur would refer to us as slabs of wet clay primed for moulding. So fucking detached. Once you've lived so many years, they'd say, life takes its toll, and the clay, well, it sets, hardens, and trying to reshape a grown man becomes impossible, because they just splinter and snap. So, kids are the only ones that can be subjected to the mutations. At least, they're the only ones that stand any sort of chance. Even then, most break anyway." The Witcher stared at Galanthea, assessing her reaction. "Most of the boys I knew now sleep in shallow graves." She avoided his gaze and instead surveyed the pastures aside the road. "Yeah, dead children don't make the best ballad material, do they?" Turning back to the Witcher, she remained silent, her eyes welling with curiosity. "We had to bury them ourselves, with the mangled bodies and twisted faces, mouths still agape from their final screams. The thing is, they were the lucky ones because they got out quick. The rest of us poor sods had to go on and endure Alzur's various trials, or so he calls them, as if they were heroic feats we had been chosen to undertake to prove our worth. As if we had a choice to go through hell for that cunt's validation." Hi, YouTube. "You say he does it all for the vision of a better world? Well, I say fuck that. He does it all for himself, for vain glory. Helping others is just overspill. Sure, he'd feign compassion from time to time, when eyes were on him. Like when the fools who funded his sordid little project came to visit. Oh, he'd put on quite a show for the aristocrats. Real hospitable he'd get while parading us about, flaunting his success, his brilliance. 'Behold what the great Alzur hath conjured for you, gentlemen.' The arrogant fuck," he snorted. Then, content with their investment, they'd leave, and he'd snap right back to cold indifference. He'd return to his tower. Wouldn't see him again till the next trial was ready, and those weren't exactly happy occasions for us. Nah, we were just a means to an end for that bastard, a way to establish his reputation and ensure his legacy." His eyes glazed over as he pondered. "We were just wet clay in the hand, ready to be shaped to his will." A moment lingered. "You tell quite the tale, Witcher," Galanthea smirked softly. "Ever considered a profession in storytelling?" "Jest if you must, but it's the damn truth, and fuck perspective." He hawked and spat into the dirt, then returned to brooding in memory. His eyes lingered on the Witcher. Her eyes lingered on the Witcher, rather, as he ambled alongside the wagon, steeped in thought. "You know," she paused, considering her words carefully, "I'm generally grateful you were with us last night. I'd like you to know that." The Witcher hesitated, then nodded. "I should go on ahead and make sure there's no surprises awaiting us down the trail." He blinked away a memory, then grasped the reins of his horse. "Enjoy your rest," and galloped away. The Road to Maribor Part 8. Galanthea reclined in the back of the wagon, relaxing as she gazed up at the cloudless sky. She blinked slowly, her lids heavy and sluggish as she listened to the rhythmic trot of the horses up front. High above, a flock of birds circled amidst the vast azure. One of them let out a hellish shriek. She squinted and realized that they weren't birds at all. Wide, ragged wings flapped sporadically and long, scaly tails flicked behind them. The flying terrors swooped lower, descended on the caravan. One yowled as it exploded into a ball of gore, then another and another. A torrent of blood and guts rained down. Alzur's voice reverberated all around. "Fear not, little one. You're safe." The crimson downpour lapsed to clear water, as if thrashed against the outside of a town hall, a warm glow radiating from its windows. Inside, emaciated bodies coughed and wheezed as they huddled together in groups of men, women, and children, shaking and whimpering. A figure in a black waxed overcoat and beaked mask weaved through the bodies, prodding them inquisitively with his cane. On a makeshift stage of crates, a young Galanthea, donning boyish troubadour attire, played a fiddle and sang a cheery song for her sickly audience. Their sunken eyes gleamed with contoured joy as they smiled through their agony. A croaky, brittle voice cut through the scene. "Oh dear, sweet poor thing, the sickness, 'tis in you, deep hath it burrowed." Galanthea stopped playing and lowered her instrument. His eyes widened. A congregation of corpses sat before her, their naked bodies withered and rotten. Each wore a beaked mask. One by one, they began to caw, growing louder and louder. A symphony of hoarse coos consumed the soundscape. The candles extinguished, plunging the room into pitch black and eerie silence. "Death looms and your light fades." Two eyes shone amid the dark. "But fret not, my child, for old Thelma can cure thy rot." Flames from a central hearth blazed up, illuminating the inside of a small cottage. An assortment of trinkets and baubles piled up high around the room. Crows adorned the shelves and rafters, cawing as they hopped about. Young Galanthea, skinny and pale, sat in front of the fire, staring at the old lady draped in black feathers on the other side of the flame. "An oath shalt thou take, thy song thou shalt give." She flashed her teeth at the young bard. "And old Thelma will ensure thou go on, that thou shalt live," she sniggered. The flames of the hearth flared and swelled, spilling across the timber flooring and crawling up the walls, consuming everything. In the middle of a secluded grove, a cottage burned violently, and a harrowing scream pierced through the inferno. "Child, what have thou done?" Galanthea stood in the grove, watching the fiery destruction through wet eyes. And Alzur's voice echoed all around. "Just nod, Snowdrop, and consider it done." A hand squeezed her shoulder. She turned to see Alzur standing next to her, his face and chest spattered with blood. He knelt before her, and a malevolent grin crept across his face. "2 for 2, he chuckled. Fire devoured the grove, the hideous wailing crescendoed. Galanthea's eyes snapped open and she sat upright, her skin slick with sweat. Catching her breath, she surveyed her surroundings and noticed that the wagon had stopped. Sounds of an argument came from nearby. A shrill voice shouted, "We ain't messing around, you hear? Step the fuck back!" She hopped off the back of the wagon and saw they were pulled up next to an inn alongside a road. A wooden sign read, "The Double Cross." Galanthea rounded the wagon's rear to see the caravan encircled by a mismatched band of men and women in peasants' garb, armed with rusty swords, scythes, and pitchforks. In the middle, a lanky woman brandished a crossbow with a tense, shaky grasp and pointed it at the soldier. The soldier took a step towards her. "Come on, don't be daft." He took another step, a tad too aggressively. "You don't have to." Bang! A bolt sprang forth, striking the soldier in the knee. He grunted and clasped at the shaft, then toppled to the ground. "Plow it, bitch!" I fucking warned you I did," she stuttered, then flickered her eyes around the onlookers. "None of you fuck about, alright? Or you see what you'll get," she exclaimed nervously as she hastily fumbled another bolt into the groove. "Anyone take issue with that?" None of the travellers responded. "Good." The woman nodded to one of her men. "Get him inside, out of the way." And we go on to part 9 of The Road to Maribor. "Just our fucking luck this is," the dwarf glowered as he lit another candle, placing it on one of the kegs in the corner of the cellar. "Please do be careful with the flames," the halfling cautioned, "lest we hop out of the frying pan and into the, well, you know." "Ah, dinny worry. Got hands as steady as stone." He lit another and positioned it on a shelf. How long you been down here, laddie? He asked the innkeeper, who was perched on a barrel. Oh, not too long. A few days, perhaps. The innkeeper panned over the company of travellers. You're the first they've... Robbed? The dwarf got in. Yeah. Sorry, look, don't take it personally. They aren't all brigands. Not really. I mean, I know most of them. Their local farmers are even helping. But with this accursed drought lingering as long as it has, folks have got real desperate. They're hopeless. So, they're improvising. The soldier let out a moan as Galanthea tightened rags around his bloodied knee. Dust fell from the ceiling and stifled footsteps trampled the floorboards above their heads, along with muffled voices. I'm sorry about your friend. I'm sure they didn't mean it. Don't worry, he'll be fine, won't you? The soldier grumbled. But no more soldiering for you, eh? He chuckled. Best get used to guard duty. He grinned as he lit an oil lamp, illuminating a large painting resting against the back wall. The huge canvas depicted an immense battlefield. One side raised white and black standards in triumphant celebration, while the other army cowered beneath a torrent of raining fire descending from the sky. Amid the victors, an illustrious-looking mage stood proud with his arms raised, surrounded by luminous runes. The final battle of the endless war, the innkeeper informed them. Alzur's double cross, the painting's called. We used to get many folks from Ellender passing through, and it seems in bad taste. So we popped it down here, out of the way. He chuckled. Can't do much about the name in the inn, though. So it's true, then, the halfling probed. Alzur used his magic to slay an army? The dwarf held the lamp's glow up to the painting. Aye, it looks that way. More dust fell from the ceiling as people moved about above. The indistinct voices increased in volume. What, you've heard of him, then? Alzur? The innkeep asked. Some tales here and there, aye. The dwarf scanned over the burning army. Its soldiers fleeing and screaming as they perished. They didn't stand a chance. The innkeeper rose from the barrel and strolled over to the painting. The artwork doesn't show it, but it said he opened a portal. He used a spell to summon something dreadfully powerful from, another world, I suppose. People talk about how the sky split apart and a storm of swirling fire swept across the battlefield. But it weren't no dragon or anything like that. No, something much worse. He stroked his moustache. He laid waste to their army, whatever it was. A crushing defeat. And Ellender, they had no choice but to surrender outright. They gave up the throne of Vizima to the Duke of Maribor the very next day. And it finally put an end to the endless war. It ain't right, scorned the dwarf, gawping at the canvas. It's a swindle. Battles should be fought with honour on an equal footing. None of this otherworldly shite. Those men shouldn't have died in such a way. Yes, quite right, I have to agree, the halfling added. He did it, Galanthea looked up from the soldier, her eyes sombre, to save lives. The dwarf guffawed. Aye, lass, and I fuck for chastity. No, she's quite right, the innkeeper corrected. The war was some nasty business. Endless bloodshed raged across these parts for generations. Also, one duke or another could sit upon a slightly bigger throne. Aye, I've heard about the skirmishes, but why did it last so long? Well, the innkeeper sat on the barrel. Both forces were equal in strength, so they found themselves at a constant stalemate, no side winning more than its fair share of battles. And with the balance came the hope of eventual victory, I guess, for both sides. So neither duke would back down, nor their sons or their sons' sons. They just kept on sending men to slaughter time and time again, for duty or honour or pride or whatever other lie the nobles tell their pawns to justify their sacrifice. And sacrifice is putting it lightly. Around these parts you'd be hard-pressed to find a family who didn't lose several ancestors to that blasted war. The dwarf shook his head solemnly. Without Alzur's intervention, the innkeeper concluded, there's no saying how long that bloodshed could have continued. The dwarf furrowed his brow. Aye, but it can't be right, can it, to do such a thing? He shouldn't be messing in the fates of others. Meddling in the fates of others, Galanthea smiled, is what he does best. A shrill scream rang out from upstairs. Thud.